Live. Steve Bunce is with me here in the studio, and in Atlantic City, our boxing commentator Mike Costello and former light welterweight world champion Paulie Malignaggi, who'll be commentating on the fight for us on Saturday night. Well, we talked quite a bit about judging in boxing following Amir Khan's controversial loss to Lamont Peterson in Washington last weekend. It's the third high-profile contentious decision in the space of a month, following Manny Pacquiao's contested win against Juan Manuel Marquez and British heavyweight Derek Chisora's defeat to Finland's Robert Helenius. Well, one of the people at ringside who scored Saturday's Khan fight in Peterson's favour was British-Irish middleweight Matthew Macklin. He concedes that scoring a fight can be difficult.
Well, you were looking for punches landed, but is it a punch that someone's landed that's just about made contact and he's moving away? Is that the same as someone who's snapped someone's head back with a big uppercut? No, it's not. And I think at the end of the round, you always have a feeling at who won that round, who had the best of it. That's what you're usually looking for. You're looking for scoring punches landing, but also with a bit of force, with a bit of effect. Is one guy hurting the other, or is the other having no effect? You know, although, I mean, if we're going for just exactly punches that land, then, you know, we're back to the amateurs where you're just hitting the buttons. I do think there's an element of, like, who's hurting the other guy, who's bossing the tempo, who's bossing what's happening in there. You know, and you just always have a feeling at the end of the round, no, I think that guy won that. Sometimes you don't. You think, I don't know, I can't separate them. You know, and sometimes you literally can't separate them to the extent that you share the round. Other times you think there's nothing in it, but that guy pushed the fight. He was the one who made that round. He looked the stronger guy. He looked like he was bossing it, dictating. So you might sway with him in a close round.
Will it affect, and does it affect, how you approach your next fight, given that you were, if you like, a victim of one of these decisions?
You're always bearing in mind when I'm going over to fight Sturm in Germany, I thought, you know, I want to be winning the rounds big, you know, and that affected my tactics. Where I threw loads, where I was completely throwing a lot more, outlanding him. In hindsight, maybe I would have been a bit more patient and let him lead off more and open up more. I might have caught him cleaner and possibly wobbled him, dropped him, knocked him out, who knows, because I certainly had the power to hurt him. But the fact that I was throwing so much, he was so negative, it was hard to land really clean. So, you know, the fact that it was in the back of my mind that I didn't want close rounds made me kind of up my work rate and the effort to kind of win rounds really big. So, yeah, I mean, it does affect how you see things. I mean, with this fight on Saturday night, Frotch, it's going to be in the back of his mind what happened with Khan in Washington, and he's going to be thinking, I need to make sure I'm winning these rounds clean.
Well, that was Matthew Macklin speaking with Mike earlier in the week. And Steve, you know, he makes the point, doesn't he, that in the end, it's a subjective thing.
Yeah, it is a subjective thing, and with the pros, it is generally down to how powerful a shot looks. You know, the amateurs, as he said, you can nick a shot just by touching someone with the white part of the glove. It is down to that. And I've got to be honest with you, and I don't want to go straight back into the Amir Khan debate here, but you know, I've kind of dismissed the fact that that he lost on points. He threw it away by repeatedly fouling, and those 2 points cost him the fight. Without those 2 points, he wins the fight. The Robert Helenius fight, that was tight. I thought Derek Chisora did enough. I thought Matt Macklin did enough to beat Sturm. The real disgrace recently was when Las Vegas as a city voted for the $500 million night next year by keeping Manny Pacquiao in the winning section against Juan Manuel Marquez, okay? Because that was the real disgrace, because you just knew there was in the offing there was a fight that was going to generate $500 million, or there was a fight between one guy that's already been outboxed by the other guy. And I'm telling you, that night in the ring, all that people were doing was looking at a little Filipino. That had me so angry and enraged, because that was a classic fit-up. I'm convinced of it.
Well, certainly vested interests involved in that one, weren't there? I mean, how often, Mike, do you sit at ringside? I mean, how many fights have you watched over the years? And how often do you sit at ringside and think, yeah, OK, the judges got that right. That's exactly what I'd have done as well?
To be honest, I think that's most of the time. One of the issues here is that when you watch a fight, for example, a British fighter boxing in Germany, it tends to affect how you actually look at it and score it. Because in the back of the mind, you're thinking to yourself, now, will the judges score it this way because, for example, Macklin is in Germany, Felix Sturm's home country, and therefore maybe he's got to do more than he should do to win. And I think that's one of the difficulties I have with boxing in general. Matthew Macklin was saying there that he actually changed his tactics and worked a different way against Sturm than he he was thinking about at the beginning of his build-up to the fight. And going back to the Khan fight last week, he was talking about is a really crisp uppercut that rocks back the head better than 3 softer jabs. And that's sometimes the equation that the judges have to make. If you look at the punch statistics from last weekend, the volume was with Khan. He threw many more punches, but Peterson threw many more quality, in other words, power punches. And that's one of the dilemmas that the judges face perennially.
Paul, is there a better way? Paulie, is there a better way of judging a fight? Is this as good as it can be, or would you like to see it done in a different way?
It's really hard to come up with a set system to say, oh, this system is better than that system to judge fights. But like we were discussing before, it is very subjective. Matt Macklin scored the fight for Lamont Peterson last week. By nature, Matt Macklin is an aggressive fighter. I scored the fight in favor of Amir Khan last week. By nature, I'm a fighter that fights in retreat. So, it's subjective as to what you like or what you don't like. And so in that aspect, in that regard, when the fight is close, there's always going to be controversy. My problem is when there's a fight that is so clear-cut, like Bunce was saying, the tragedy that we had in Pacquiao-Marquez, where the judges have no regard for what's going on in the ring. Pacquiao has to win in order to save the super fight with Mayweather, so we're going to make Pacquiao win no matter what happens in the ring. When I see things like that, or Paul Williams with Arislan De Lara, over here in the United States, Al Heyman has a ton of influence on the boxing world, and so any of his fighters, you have a very hard time getting a decision against. Paul Williams easily lost 9 rounds, but Arislan De Lara was given the defeat by majority decision. So what I have a problem with is when the fight is not close, when the fight is not subjective, when the fight is clearly there's a winner that stands above and beyond, and the judges still don't get it right. To me, that's no longer a mistake or subjective. To me, that's outright corruption.
So how do you decide who the judges are going to be? For example, Steve, we've got an American judge, a British judge and Canadian judge for the Froch-Ward fight on Saturday night. Should Carl Froch be happy with that in his camp?
I think he should be happy with that. And as Rob McCracken mentioned earlier on, there was no need for any horse trading this week. Had there been 3 local judges or 1 or 2 from California, I'm sure that Carl Froch would have been instructing the people around him who he pays money to get in there and change it. He didn't have to. We've got an English judge, a fairly neutral Canadian judge and an American judge. And we've got an American referee who we all know, because he's quite high profile and he's a guy that lets things fight. I don't have a problem with that. There is an argument, and people have been talking about it on different internet forums since last week, of parachuting in, overseas officials. The problem is that Las Vegas only uses officials from Nevada, so you can't parachute in a neutral judge from Argentina and one from Belgium and one from Australia, because in Nevada they'd reject it. So that plan, if you implement that plan elsewhere, it wouldn't actually be put into practice in Nevada. So it'd be a waste of time implementing the thing.
And sometimes, Steve, those judges that you were parachuting anyway are simply not experienced enough to deal with big occasions like that and to be sure enough of the verdicts that they're making round by round.
100% right, Mike.
Well,
yes.
Sorry, Paulie, go on.
Yeah, now, Bunce, I wanted to make another point. The Hellenius fight was in Finland. Chisora fought in Finland against a Finn fighter. Felix Sturm and Matt Macklin went to Germany and fought a German fighter. I don't think it's the same thing as going to those countries and fighting a native of that country as when you come to the United States and fight an American fighter. In the United States, you can have a foreigner get a controversial decision over an American fighter, such as we saw with Ricky Hatton and Louis Collazo, and I'm sure there are others. America is probably the least most home favored country. Only if it's in the home city, then I would say, okay, there's a debate as to, okay, this is in his home city. But the country is so big that people really don't care many times if one guy is an American or not. You saw Ricky Hatton, Floyd Mayweather. You have Americans cheering for Ricky Hatton. So there's really not a sense of patriotism when it comes to our boxers here in the United States. Fans just pick a fighter. The networks themselves influence the fans when you watch them on television, and they don't even favor the American fighters. So like for example, last week, instead of harping on Lamont Peterson's victory, the HBO announcers were harping on the Khan points law deductions. So a lot of times it's neutral in that way, and that's why I expect a lot of neutrality on Saturday night. I expect it to be as neutral as possible, because Andre Ward, outside of the boxing fans, is not very known in the United States, even if he should be, and he'd probably be a superstar if he was from any other country. And fighting 3,000 miles away from home with neutral officiating, I think this is about as neutral a fight as you can make it.
Let's have a final word on Amir Amir Khan? Because I think you've all made it fairly clear that you're not all that sympathetic about his complaints about the judges and his attempt to get the fight overturned. He's told 5 Live Breakfast that, you know, whatever happened in that fight, he wants a rematch. He wants to face Peterson again.
Yeah, that's what we want. We want a rematch. I want to settle the score. There's a complaint that's gone through to the commission in Washington, so hopefully they're thinking about changing and turning over the decision.
Well, we'll wait to see. Is that rematch definitely going to happen?
Well, you know, Lamont Peterson did say live on TV that he wanted to give me a rematch. Also, at the press conference, he said that. And at the moment, I think it's just been a little bit hard to get now. But we're looking at, if there is a rematch, we're looking at either March or we're looking at May.
So, Steve, what do you think? Should there be a rematch?
Oh, absolutely right. It was a tight, close fight. It was fantastic. You know, Paulie over there for us, he thinks that Amir won. Matt Macklin over there for Sky, he thinks that Lamont Peterson won. You know, it's divided people. Absolutely, there should be a rematch. It will do great business. It'll be fantastic. But, unfortunately, the people surrounding Amir Khan, as good as they are and as successful as they are and as experienced as they are, they're incredibly naive. They've gone to this guy's hometown. They've got a guy in the ring who shouldn't have been in the ring. And let's not even talk about what he did. He just wasn't experienced enough. And they haven't got a rematch clause in the contract. So it's down to Lamont Peterson to go to the table having made peanuts and say, I want gold-plated cashew nuts for this fight. If he gets his cashew nuts, there'll be a rematch and it'll be March, I think, not May. And
good news for Derek Chisora, because he's going to be fighting Vitaly Klitschko on February the 18th.
Well, there was no irony in your good news for Derek Chisora there, because he's about to go in with one of the most destructive and unpleasant and there's a lovely fellow outside the ring, unpleasant heavyweights that there is on the planet, and he would live in any era of all of the nasty men out there. But good for Derek, because I'll tell you one thing, the Klitschkos don't like Derek Chisora. There's something about him that spooked them. He's kind of got under their skin. So I think this is a particularly good fight for Big Del, and also for British boxing, because what if he pulled off the shock of shocks?
And we've been talking about, in judging, sometimes you can't help but use the phrase only in boxing. Just 5 minutes ago, I looked on the WBC's website. Remember, this is for the WBC version of the World Heavyweight title. And the champion is supposed to take on a challenger from somewhere within the top 15. Does Derek Chisora appear in the top 15? Absolutely.
He will in the next rankings. In next month's rankings, you will see him.
On the back of a defeat, he'll be promoted.
What a business, eh, Mike?
Yeah. Well.